Hello friends, welcome to EPG Pathshala. My name is Utkarsh Yadav and I am Assistant Professor, School of Law, Galgotias University. The module that we will be discussing today is Legal Framework of Probation Sentencing. In this module of Legal Framework of Probation Sentencing, we would discuss the statutory framework underlying probation sentencing in India. The law relating to probation is primarily contained under the Code of Criminal Procedure 1973 and the Probation of Offenders Act 1958. This module would explore the statutory provisions relating to probation and their interplay. It would also analyze the circumstances and cases which have been considered by the court for allowing release of offender on probation. The module would further highlight the modalities adopted by the courts and agencies involved in probation while deciding whether to release the offender on probation. Probation may be defined as a conditional suspension of the imposition of punishment on the selected offenders on their undertaking to maintain good behavior for a specified period with or without the supervision of probation officer. It is a method of penal non-institutional treatment of offenders developed as an alternative to imprisonment out of realization that short-term imprisonment is harmful and ineffective. Strangely, there is no precise legislative definition of the term probation. Neither the Criminal Procedure Code 1973 nor the Probation of Offenders Act 1958 defines what probation means. Everett Fitzgerald gives this generally accepted definition of probation in USA. A form of disposition under which a court suspends either the sentence or the execution of the judgment of sentence of selected offenders, releasing them conditionally on good behavior, under prescribed terms and rules and subject to control, guidance and assistance of the court as exercised through officers appointed to supervise them. So probation is a method of dealing with offenders and is viable alternative to imprisonment. It is an embodiment of the progressive penal policy of individualization of punishment. The emphasis is on the offender rather than the offense. Thus, the law assists the offender to erase the stigma of crime by providing him a chance for adjustment in the society. It saves him from the deleterious influence of prison life that comes in the way of his re-socialization in the society after his release from the jail. The measure is also very economical as it involves a fractional amount in comparison with the maintenance of the prisoner in jail. Probation by no means is a let-off or leniency. In fact, original offence remains punishable during the period of probation. If the offender fails to observe the condition of good behavior, keeping the peace, etc., he renders himself liable to be punished for the original offence. The punishment is likely to be more severe because the offender knows he would get no commiseration from the court whose sympathetic and humanistic approach he has floated with impunity. The fear of the imposition of undeclared suspended sentence with more rigors deters the probationer from repeating the crime. The timely supervision, guidance, counseling and assistance controls his deviation from the normal course of human conduct. The underlying object of probation is to achieve the celebrated goal of criminal justice, viz., protection of society and prevention of crime by the rehabilitation of the offender in the society as its useful member through the reformatory community-based non-institutional treatment. It is designed only for those offenders who are reclaimable through the said treatment. As a safeguard, it reserves the option of sentence. Therefore, it is a combination of both punishment and treatment. It can be called as a legal disposition of the case by the court where the offender is sentenced to serve time on test, that is, the conduct of the offender is on trial. At the same time, it is a process of individualized treatment which is community-based. Such a method is ideal for the young and first-time offenders where criminality is not deep-rooted and therefore is curable. The young offenders, being at the sensitive stage of their development, need special care and treatment. Probation is not intended for professional and hardened offenders who are beyond redemption. Their persistent and precarious antisocial activities do call for their prolonged detention as the only assurance of the protection of the society and prevention of crime. Release of such incorrigible offenders on probation defeats the basic object of the scheme of probation. This rather encourages them and their prospective comrades to imperil the society, jeopardize its safety, shake the confidence of the victim and public in the administration of criminal justice. Now let us see the legal framework of probation. The law relating to probation sentencing is broadly contained in Code of Criminal Procedure 1973, Probation of Offenders Act 1958 and also under the Juvenile Justice Care and Protection of Children Act 2015. Although there is quite a parallel between the provisions of CRPC and Probation of Offenders Act, however, there is no confusion as to their applicability. Wherever Probation of Offenders Act is applicable, the provisions of Criminal Procedure Code shall not apply. Now, let us first see the provisions of Code of Criminal Procedure 1973. Section 360 CRPC enables the court under certain circumstances to release the accused who has been convicted on probation of good conduct. It applies only to first-time offenders who are entitled to the indulgence on the score of their age, character or antecedent and to the circumstances in which the offence is committed. This section is a piece of beneficent legislation. The object of this section is to avoid sending the first offender to prison for an offence which is not of a serious character and thereby ruining the risk of turning him into a regular criminal. First-time offenders fall into two classes. First, those above the age of 21 years and convicted of an offence punishable with fine only or imprisonment for a term of 7 years or less. And second, those under the age of 21 years or women and convicted of an offence not punishable with death or imprisonment for life. A court cannot pass an order under this section where the offence charged is punishable with more than 7 years imprisonment and the person accused is more than 21 years old. It is the date upon which the court dealt with the offender which is crucial date for reckoning the age of the accused. The provision confers a discretion on the court and the court has to exercise its discretion according to the circumstances of each case, and an accused cannot claim as a right such exercise of discretion in his favour. Even where the conditions set out in section 360 subsection 1 are fulfilled, the person convicted cannot as a right claim the benefit of the provisions of the section. The fact that it is the first conviction would not alone be sufficient. The discretion is to be exercised having regard to the circumstances in which the crime was committed and the age, character and antecedents of the offender. This section applies to both young and adult offenders. The section applies to two classes of persons. First, women and persons under the age of 21 years and persons over that age. For applicability of the section, two conditions must coexist. First, no previous conviction is proved, and second, the offence must be of the character specified in the section. In exercising the discretion, the court is to have regard to the other directions in the section, viz. The age, character and antecedent of the offender and to the circumstances in which the offence was committed. The object of the section is to offer an alternative to the courts so that in the case of first-time offenders of tender age, they may offer them a further chance to turn over a new leaf. To send such persons to jail may have the effect of turning into habitual criminals those who have drifted without thinking into crime. A convicted person below 21 years of age with no bad antecedent has to be dealt with under this provision. The section casts a duty upon the court to give benefit of this provision wherever possible to do so and to record special reason if it does not do so. A mandatory duty has been cast on the court to apply the provisions of section 360 where an accused is convicted. Whenever a claim for release on probation is raised, it is not more of a benefit to the accused but a duty cast upon the court to play a pivotal role in implementing intelligently and compassionately with all its comprehension the law of probation, which has cast and created new responsibilities and new areas of decision making. Section 361 CRPC was inserted in the code because it was observed that the courts rarely used the statutory provisions incorporated in the Probation of Offenders Act 1958 or the Children Act 1960 or other similar laws. To ensure that such provisions should be used frequently, the courts are now required to give reasons in their judgment for not applying the provisions of those special laws whenever they were applicable. However, where the nature of the offender or the offence is such that it could not be dealt with by the special laws, no reasons are required to be given. In view of this section, the court has to examine the age, character, antecedents of the offender and also the circumstances in which the offence was committed. Further, unless it comes to the conclusion that it is impossible to reform and rehabilitate him, there is no reason why the benefit of the Probation of Offenders Act be not given to him. This section mandates assigning special reasons by the court for not dealing with the accused under this section. Whether or not the accused advances a submission to be released on probation, it is the mandatory duty of the court to comply with the mandate of Section 361 suo motu. When the condition precedent prescribed for invoking the benefit of Section 360 are satisfied, the court must apply the same, or in case of non-application, reasons shall be recorded therefor. The provisions of Section 361 require that reasons shall be recorded for not having dealt with the accused under this section. The provisions as to recording the reasons where probation is not allowed are mandatory. This section is applicable only to offenders below 21 years of age. Therefore, recording of special reason is not obligatory in case of offenders above 21 years of age. Now, let us see the legislative provisions under the Probation of Offenders Act 1958. In 1958, the Parliament enacted the Probation of Offenders Act, which lays down the legal scheme for probation sentencing. The underlying object of the Probation of Offenders Act has been clearly stated in Ramji Misr versus State of Bihar in following words. The object of the Act is to prevent the turning of youthful offenders into criminals by their association with hardened criminals of mature age within the walls of a prison. In Jugal Kishore Prasad versus State of Bihar, the court has again explained the philosophy behind the Act by observing that the object of the Act is to prevent the conversion of youthful offenders into obdurate criminals as a result of their association with hardened criminals of mature age in cases the youthful offenders are sentenced to undergo imprisonment in jail. Now, let us see the provisions of the Probation of Offenders Act 1958. The first provision that we will discuss is Section 3. Section 3 applies when any person is found guilty of having committed an offence punishable under Section 379, 380, 404, 420 of the Indian Penal Code. It also applies in case of any offence punishable with imprisonment for not more than 2 years or with fine or both under the Indian Penal Code or any other law. The court has the power to release the offender under this section after due admonition. Section 4 of the Act deals with the power of the court to release certain offenders on probation of good conduct. An offender may be released on probation if following conditions are fulfilled. First, any person is found guilty of having committed an offence. Second, the offence so committed must not be punishable with death or imprisonment for life. Third, the court by which the person is found guilty is of the opinion that it is expedient to release him on probation of good conduct. Fourth, the court may form such opinion having regard to 1. The circumstances of the case, 2. The nature of the offence, and 3. The character of the offender. If the above conditions are fulfilled, the court may, instead of sentencing him at once to any punishment, direct that the offender should be released on entering into a bond to appear and receive sentence when called upon during the period of probation. The bond so directed may be taken with or without securities. The period of probation will be such as the court may direct, but it will not exceed 3 years. The probation order shall provide that the offender shall keep peace and be of good behavior during the probation period. Proviso appended to Section 4 subsection 1 further states that an offender shall not be released on probation of good conduct unless the court is satisfied that the offender or his surety, if any, has a fixed place of abode or regular occupation in the place over which the court exercises jurisdiction or in which the offender is likely to live during the period for which he enters into the bond. In Dalbir Singh versus State of Haryana, the Supreme Court, while interpreting Section 4 of the Act, observed that Parliament made it clear that only if the court forms the opinion that it is expedient to release the convict on probation for his good conduct, regard being had to the circumstances of the case. One of the circumstances which cannot be sidelined in forming the said opinion is the nature of the offence. Thus, the Parliament has left it to the court to decide when and how the court should form such opinion. It provided sufficient indication that releasing the convicted person on probation of good conduct must appear to the court to be expedient. The word expedient had been thoughtfully employed by the Parliament in the section so as to mean it as apt and suitable to the end in view. The court further observed that courts must bear in mind that when any plea is made based on Section 4 of the Act for application to a convicted person under Section 304 capital A of IPC, the fact that road accidents have proliferated to alarming extent and the toil is galloping up day by day in India, criminal courts cannot treat the nature of the offence under Section 304 capital A IPC as attracting. Now let's proceed to Section 5 of the Act. Section 5 deals with the power of the court to require an offender released under Section 3 or Section 4 of the Act to pay compensation. Any order for payment of compensation shall be such as the court thinks reasonable for loss or injury caused to any person by the commission of the offence. Now let's study the importance of pre-sentence report. The courts, in addition to legal data, need social data regarding the physical and social environment of the offender in order to place him on probation. Such data is collected by the probation officer through investigation and included in the report. Such a report is known as social investigation report or pre-sentence report. This is provided under Section 4 subsection 2 as well as under Section 6 subsection 2 of the Act. This report serves as a basic document in the whole process of probation. The importance of this report can be gauged by the opinion of US Supreme Court as expressed hereunder. Probation workers' report have been given high value by conscientious judges who want to sentence persons on the best available information rather than on guesswork, unquote. The pre-sentence report, therefore, is a basic document on which a critical correctional decision depends. As regards the calling for such report under the Probation of Offenders Act, Section 4 subsection 2 provides that before making any order under Section 4(1) of this Act, the court shall take into consideration the report, if any, of the probation officer concerning the case. Whereas Section 6 subsection 2 lays down that the court shall, for the purpose of satisfying itself whether or not it will be desirable to release the persons below 21 years of age on probation, call for the report from probation officer and consider the report, if any, and any other information relating to the character and physical or mental condition of the offender. A comparative analysis of Section 6 subsection 2 and Section 4 subsection 2 reveals that it is mandatory to call for a pre-sentence report under Section 6 subsection 2 when the court is dealing with an accused under 21 years of age, while Section 4 subsection 2 of the Act gives a discretion to the court to call for such report from the probation officer when it is dealing with an accused above 21 years of age. Now let us discuss Section 6 of the Act. Section 6 provides that any offender under 21 years of age shall not be imprisoned unless the court is satisfied that, having regard to the circumstances of the case including the nature of the offence and the character of the offender, it would not be desirable to deal with him under Section 3 or 4, and if the court passes any sentence of imprisonment, it shall record its reason for doing so. In Muhammad Aziz versus State of Maharashtra, it was observed by the Supreme Court that Section 6 lays down an injunction as distinct from a discretion under Section 3 or Section 4 not to impose a sentence of imprisonment on a person who is under 21 years of age and is found guilty of having committed an offence punishable with imprisonment other than that of life, unless for reasons to be recorded by it, it is satisfied that it would not be desirable to deal with him under Section 3 or Section 4. This inhibition on the power of the court to impose a sentence of imprisonment applies not only at the stage of trial court but also at the stage of high court or any other court when the case comes before it in appeal or revision as per Section 11(1) of the Act. Now let's turn our attention to Section 7 of the Act. Section 7 provides that the report of a probation officer referred to in subsection 2 of Section 4 or subsection 2 of subsection 6 shall be treated as confidential. However, the court may communicate the substance thereof to the offender and may give him an opportunity of producing such evidence as may be relevant to the matter stated in the report. The importance of the report of probation officer is that it serves as an aid to the court for making decision regarding the release on probation. An ideal report should give information regarding family history and personal, social and economic factors of the offenders and a plan for correction treatment of the offender. If the recommendation is for the grant of probation, the probation officer has to evaluate the personality of the offender. The court has to make the decision after taking into consideration the probation officer's report and nature and circumstances of offences. The most important consideration is to appraise the risk involved to the society in releasing the offender and whether the risk is worth taking in the context of the offender's personality and the community at large. Now let us discuss Section 8 of the Act. Section 8 gives power to the court which passes an order under Section 4 in respect of an offender to vary the conditions of any bond on the application of probation officer, if it is of the opinion that it is expedient or necessary to do so in the interest of the offender and the public. The court may vary the bond by extending or diminishing the duration of bond, but the period so extended shall not exceed 3 years from the date of original order. It may even alter the condition or insert additional conditions in the bond. This brings us to Section 9 of the Act, which deals with the power of the court in cases the offender fails to observe the conditions of the bond. The powers under this section can be exercised by the court which passes an order under Section 4 of the Act. If the court, on the basis of the report of a probation officer or otherwise, has reasons to believe that the offender has failed to observe any of the conditions of the bond entered by him, it may issue warrant of arrest or, if it thinks fit, issue summons to him or his sureties. When the offender consequently is brought or appears before the court may either remand him to custody or release him on bail. The court thereafter, after hearing the case, is satisfied that the offender has failed to observe any of the condition of the bond, it may take following action against him. First, the court may sentence him for the original offence, or where the offence on the part of the offender is for first time, then the court may impose upon him a penalty not exceeding 50 rupees. The court may do so without prejudice to the continuation in force of the bond already entered into by the offender. Now, let us discuss Section 12 of the Act. Section 12 declares that a person found guilty of an offence and dealt with under the provisions of Section 3 or Section 4 of the Act shall not suffer any disqualification attaching to a conviction of an offence under such law. However, if the person after his release under Section 4 is subsequently sentenced for the original offence, then the disqualification postulated under the law would be applicable. Section 14 of the Act enlists the duties of the probation officer, which are as follows. First, inquire in accordance with any direction of a court into the circumstances or home surroundings of any person accused of an offence with a view to assist the court in determining the most suitable method of dealing with him and submit report to the court. Second, supervise probationers and other persons placed under his supervision and where necessary endeavour to find them suitable employment. Third, advise and assist offenders in the payment of compensation or costs ordered by the court. Fourth, advise and assist in such cases and in such manner as may be prescribed. Fourth, advise and assist in such cases and in such manner as may be prescribed persons who have been released under Section 4 and perform such other duties as may be prescribed. This brings us to the provisions with regard to probation under the Juvenile Justice Act 2015. Besides the Code of Criminal Procedure 1973 and Probation of Offenders Act 1958, besides the Code of Criminal Procedure 1973 and Probation of Offenders Act 1958, the Juvenile Justice Act also provides for the release of children who have committed offences to be released on probation of good conduct and placed under the care of any parent, guardian or other fit person, on such parent, guardian or other fit person executing a bond with or without surety or any fit institution as the board may require for the good behaviour and well-being of the juvenile for any period not exceeding 3 years. This brings us to the conclusion of this module. The Parliament, by laying down the legal framework of probation sentencing, has made its intent clear that reformation and rehabilitation of offender is an important aspiration of sentencing. Adequate provisions have been laid down under the Criminal Procedure Code and Probation of Offenders Act to completely realize the benefits of probation sentencing. The applicability of these provisions have been further reinforced by providing a mandatory clause in each statute that in case the court refuses to release an offender on probation, it will have to record its reason for doing so. The Probation of Offenders Act goes one step further and provides for appointment of probation officer who would assist the courts in exercising their discretion and would also supervise an offender released on probation. The Act further provides for payment of compensation to victims by the offender released on probation. However, the intent of the legislature can only be effectuated once the courts realize their obligation to deal with the offenders under the benevolent provisions spelt out in the Criminal Procedure Code and Probation of Offenders Act. Further, the executive will also have to create and nurture institutions which nurture probation sentencing. The legislature has done its part by legislating on the subject and investing courts with considerable discretion. Now it is for the courts and executive to take the baton forward. With this, we come to the end of this module. Thank you for listening.